honored to be a small part of the International Congress of Insurance Law. Honored to be able to write a preface for your book. Very sorry I could not be there in person due to administrative responsibilities here. But thanks, Dr. Ernesto and the Brazilian Insurance Law Institute for inviting me. The work of the Institute, the IBDS, is setting a very important example internationally. The work of the IBDS is very important. We need more organizations in other countries like the Institute that are independent and arm's length from the insurance industry and can work for the public good. And it is exciting to hear about more progress in the long struggle to reform insurance law in Brazil. So I'm just going to say a few words about insurance and discrimination, especially discrimination against poor and racialized minorities in Canada and the United States. I've been researching insurance for many years, and I love the idea. I love the ideal of insurance. Insurance can be a wonderful way of fostering a community of support against many of our worst fears. Insurance is, and insurance should be, at the very heart of society. Insurance is not just another business. Instead, insurance occupies a very special social role. So I call this idea insurance exceptionalism. Insurance has an exceptional place in society, like some other key institutions and professions, such as the law, medicine, and the news media. Lawyers are not simply business people. Lawyers are officers of the court. Medical doctors are not simply business people, but medical doctors have duties and responsibilities to care that transcend this. The news is not simply a business, but is central to democracy. Insurance is the same. Insurance exists in partnership with government as public risk managers. So private insurers and government carefully divide and share responsibility for protecting the public from different types of risk. Government is the ultimate risk manager and provides special support for the insurance industry when needed to manage risks. In turn, the insurance industry also has duties to the people, to the public, duties that transcend business concerns. One of these duties of insurance is sometimes to promote cross-subsidization of the vulnerable when society considers this a moral good. And I argue that if insurance can more fully acknowledge and communicate and respect its own responsibilities, insurance can rediscover its normative core. Insurance can rediscover its pure heart, and insurance can reinvent its place in public life. However, too often in today's harsh business environments, insurance has moved far away from its original idealistic roots. So we're in an increasingly individualized, selfish society one dominated by business, and in that society, the pure heart of insurance can be damaged. In North America, research shows there's a lack of public trust in financial institutions. So the public don't trust financial institutions, especially since the global financial crisis of 2008, although the research shows that public trust has been slowly rebuilding a little over the last 5 years. But public perception of the insurance industry as unethical continues to be a very big problem. I was just looking at some research from Australia, and it showed in Australia only 36% of the public, so about 1 in 3 Australians, trust insurance companies to do the right thing. So only 1 in 3 Australians trust insurance companies to do the right thing. So this lack of public trust is bad for the insurance industry for many reasons. For example, research shows that consumers are more likely to commit insurance fraud if they do not trust insurance companies. So one part of this negative public image is that insurance companies are often seen as victimizing the poor and vulnerable. Ideally, insurance can produce social solidarity among the insured, sharing risk fairly among equals. However, insurance often serves instead to create, to reproduce, to magnify social inequality and social injustice. The rich can use insurance to secure and build wealth and to pass on their fortunes to younger generations. For example, people use life insurance in Canada to avoid taxes when passing on their estates to their children. On the other hand, poor people cannot afford needed insurance coverage. In the United States, Donald Trump is working to undo the gains made by the poor in health insurance. Poor people may also be less financially literate, and so poor people may make unwise insurance choices. Poor people may be vulnerable to exploitation. Poor people may be less likely to go to court to fight for their rights if discriminated against by insurance companies. Poor people are less likely to have the various resources, the money, time, knowledge, contacts to fight a legal battle. The poor and most marginal members of society also suffer the most in disasters like hurricanes or earthquakes. The poor not only lose the most in proportionate terms, but the poor may also be uninsured, or if insured, the poor may experience discrimination in pursuing claims. The poor may be more likely to be labeled as fraud risks. Tendencies by which insurance magnifies social inequalities are worsened when insurance companies discriminate against the poor and vulnerable. Risk rating involved in selling and underwriting insurance reproduces social inequality. Actuarial risk rating can work against the potential of insurance as a mechanism of social solidarity, as Deborah Stone writes, so that pools of people tend to be split into smaller and smaller groups with the purpose of either making them pay their own way or excluding them altogether. People in the insurance business will say that such actuarial fairness is required, or else adverse selection will occur. But this argument is open to both theoretical and empirical challenges. And I would direct people to an article by the socio-legal scholar Tom Baker on adverse selection and risk classification. As people at this Congress will know, there's much debate about the ethics of using different kinds of criteria to rate risks, for example, genetic information or gender. Insurance is always in tension between the notion of actuarial fairness and the solidarity principle, and there are lively debates in socio-legal scholarship about this. In Europe, insurance practice leans more towards the solidarity principle, and in North America, more towards actuarial fairness. It might be argued simply that insurance is in the business of discrimination and risk rating. However, some forms of discrimination are illegal or outlawed because they are clearly seen to be wrong, and a socializing of the less risky supporting the more risky is seen to be morally justified. So to quote the American legal scholar Sharona Hoffman, moral fairness is more important than actuarial fairness. Socialization of risk, cross-subsidization in the risk pool in certain cases is deemed socially important. When it does this, insurance is a social institution which is more than just another business. It's a strange situation. In North America, discrimination in many other institutions is outlawed. However, in North America, legal restrictions against insurance discrimination are uneven and piecemeal. In the United States, insurance discrimination is regulated by the 50 individual American states and is different in each state. So this is one of a number of factors in the United States that's meant that insurance discrimination is difficult to regulate. There's a long history of race-based discrimination in insurance pricing and in availability in the United States. In Canada, the legislation is also piecemeal, and the legality of insurance risk rating is governed a good deal by case law rather than legislation. So that's the legal situation. Alongside the legal situation, there's a lack of clearly developed and generally accepted underlying ethical principles about what are acceptable dimensions on which to rate risks. This is strange. Given that categorical bans on discrimination on dimensions such as race or gender are widely accepted in other realms of law and governance. The underlying principle here instead seems to be that the insurance industry will do whatever it is permitted to do in any given context. Ethical questions are also buried and hidden in the way seemingly objective risk categories are constructed, and this is another factor that makes insurance discrimination difficult to regulate. So, automobile insurers in Canada have been blocked by the government in their efforts to use low credit ratings as a risk factor. So Canadian insurance companies are banned by the government from making people with low credit ratings, with bad credit, pay higher premiums. However, auto insurers are allowed to use place of residence, where you live, in risk rating, and place where you live has become a highly effective proxy for poverty, for lower socioeconomic status, and for ethnic minority status. So, poor and non-white people pay more for insurance because of the risk ratings of the areas where they live. Similarly, a study by Ong and Stoll in the United States showed that controlling for driving records, people in poor and minority neighborhoods in Los Angeles pay much higher prices for auto insurance. Also, a second very recent study by ProPublica and Consumer Reports showed in 2017 that insurers were charging significantly higher premiums in predominantly minority areas. So in, for example, African American neighborhoods or Hispanic neighborhoods, people pay more for insurance with the same risk record. A third recent study by the Consumer Federation of America found that American auto insurers hit poorer consumers with higher priced policies. These policies make it difficult for people to afford insurance at all. A social problem this creates, which the American industry is partly responsible for, is that perhaps a quarter, 25% of these poorer drivers simply do not buy auto insurance. So the poor drivers are driving illegally with no auto insurance because they can't afford it. And in this way, the American auto insurance industry is neglecting its responsibility to partner with government to manage this risk. Part of the problem is simply access. There's often little access to insurance offices in poorer communities. For example, Washington, D.C., very big city, 80 insurance offices. Only 3 of the 80 insurance offices are located in poor neighborhoods. So the study says these insurers are well aware that richer families are much more likely to own 2 or 3 expensive cars with comprehensive coverages than are poorer households, who often purchase just minimum liability coverage on an old car. So that's discrimination in risk rating. Wealthier clients may be treated more generously in the claims process as well. For example, when a Canadian company I researched dealt with automobile insurance claimants, for the preferred wealthier clients, it provided new parts to repair vehicles, but for the less preferred poorer clients, the insurance company used used replacement parts to repair their cars. This favoring of wealthy clients is in stark contrast to discrimination experienced by poor and racialized minorities. The poor and racialized minorities disproportionately experience insurance company efforts to suppress legitimate claims. So last time I spoke at the Congress, I discussed a 2001 judgment by the Utah Supreme Court versus State Farm, and I'm just going to refer to that briefly again. So to quote from the judgment against State Farm, which is one of the largest American property and casualty insurers, the court stated that State Farm repeatedly and deliberately deceived and cheated its customers. For over 2 decades, State Farm set monthly payment caps and individually rewarded insurance adjusters who paid less than the market value for claims. So there was an incentive system to suppress the claims. Agents changed the content of files, lied to customers, and committed other dishonest and fraudulent acts in order to meet financial goals. State Farm's fraudulent practices were consistently directed to persons, poor, ethnic or racial minorities, women, and the elderly who State Farm believed would be less likely to take legal action. Okay, so discrimination in insurance claims. Let me finish with an image. The situation of how insurance magnifies social inequality was demonstrated dramatically with the forest fires in the state of California in 2008, when the insurance company AIG employed private firefighters So there were firefighters paid by the insurance companies to fight the fires, but the firefighters paid by the insurance company only protected homes that were insured with AIG for over $1 million. So these private firefighters employed by an insurance company, AIG, were protecting the homes of rich policyholders, but they were letting the other homes nearby burn. So it was legal, but it was wrong. The public were horrified. This image in the media, widely publicized, of insurance fighters only protecting the homes of the richest while letting the homes of others burn, is very damaging to the industry. And so this terrible image undermines the notion of the special place of insurance as something more than just a money-making business, because insurance is more than just making money. So just to conclude, limited public trust is a very important problem for the insurance industry. Discrimination against poor and racialized insured is a key reason why the public may distrust insurance companies. Thank you.